Greetings and welcome to HillCrest Cellar 44 Wine Club Notes. We're going to do a little tasting here for our March release, which is the second to the last of the season. I always try to think about or have a theme when we go to taste in that. And so this is going to be a theme about really elegance and brightness in wines. And the three wines we're going to try a wine out of the cellar, 2018 Gobbler's Knob Cabernet Sauvignon, that is really showing kind of the finesse and the beauty of what a little bit of time in bottle shows. And then we're going to actually have a grape variety that has a very interesting American history, but it's a very rare grape in the world of wine. Something that I've enjoyed for a number of years, but it's kind of a fringe variety that I think would have great potential here. It's not grown in the area yet. And then to finish up with one of the best Rieslings we've had here in the last probably year or so, an old vine Riesling from a very special vineyard in the Mosel. So anyway, we'll get started. 2018 vintage. I mentioned like a theme. There's certain vintages in modern winemaking and our understanding, if you're on top of things, you really don't have good and bad vintage anymore as much as you have vintages that play into certain styles. And most of the industry likes very warm vintages where you get a lot of extraction, a lot of power. A classic winemaker, which I kind of figure myself to be in that camp, would actually say when you get into really big, powerful wines, they tend to be more monolithic. Whereas when you get into more kind of moderate vintages, and especially vintages with somewhat kind of cooler, especially ripening at the very, very end of the season, you tend to get into wines that are brighter, more finesse, and also show more complexity, because that heat oftentimes at the end of the season concentrates the fruit so much that you just have a lot of simplicity in fruit. And oftentimes we'll even blow aromatics through. Varieties, thin-skinned varieties like Pinot Noir, Nebbiolo, you'll go out in a vineyard on a warm spell that you're picking, and you'll actually smell that perfume out in the vineyard, which means you didn't capture that in a glass. Whereas in a cooler vintage, and that's one of the beautiful things about Umpqua, is we have those sunny days, but they're very, very cool at the end of the season. We trap that perfume that's created by the sun. So 2018 is a vintage that falls into that. Hillside Cabernet, very steep vineyard just west of Sutherland in that. And a wine that when it was young Cabernet tends to be simpler, of course, than like Pinot Noir, but tends to be very deep and dark in what it has. In time, a little bit of that fruitiness kind of falls away and you begin to see aroma bouquet. Aroma is the way the wine smells the day you put it in the bottle, which is the smell of the grape and fermentation, barrel. And then bouquet are the smells that develop over time, and this is just starting to develop a little bit of that. So the color is still very dark, but a little bit lighter in color. I can see a little bit of just a very, very light kind of a brick tinge right on the edge, which tells you it's just beginning to age a little bit. Very perfumey, but in a delicate way. Not where it smells like a simple thing. It's almost like red fruit, and there's a little bit of like a cedar and a little bit of like an earth component to the wine that's there, but it's very gentle. It doesn't hit you like a wall, just kind of very fragrant, delicate. Very tender sweetness. It reminds me of, it's actually very fine, the Grave region of Bordeaux. It's a region usually people that have drunk the wines of Bordeaux for many, many years start off with the powerful villages like Pauillac and Saint-Julien or Pomerol, and then they tend to migrate towards the very southwestern area where you have a lot of gravel, and you get a little bit lighter style wine, but much more complex and kind of perfumey. This has that. Still has a lot of youth in it though. It still has like a deepness of fruit, but in a very gentle way, and a little bit of structure to it that's very, very nice. I think about things like lamb. Wines like this, when you have something that's super rich like lamb, that we're getting into lamb season here, a couple months, and that where you have that rich foods and you have savory smells that you put on the outside like rosemary, something like this is really, really beautiful. And drinking nice. Now, kind of hit a plateau. It's kind of sitting on that plateau, and it'll be interesting to see how long it goes, but still a great future, I think. So hopefully you enjoy that. Next is going to be this grape that had kind of an interesting history in America. One of the most famous wines to ever come from America in terms of the international wine scene was a wine called Crab's Black Burgundy. And that came out of Napa Valley in the 1880s. And that's what built the reputation of To Kalon, where like Mondavi, Reserve Cabernets are produced. Opus One pulls a lot of fruit off the old To Kalon vineyard. And that grape was a Refosco. And Crab was a gentleman that had traveled around the world, wanted to make fine wine, and dedicated everything to just the greatest grape varieties, winemaking technique of their day. It's a variety that is really not grown very much. There's a little bit of it in California, I think around 100 acres. As far as I know, there's none of it in Oregon. It's a little bit like Zinfandel, tends to be kind of on the grapey, kind of saturated fruit side, has really beautiful, bright acidity, but it's best known in the Savoie, which is northeast, or not north, it'd be central eastern France, just northeast maybe of Lyon, up on the Swiss border. And it was selected supposedly by the House of Savoy, which is one of the royal houses like the House of Bourbon. And then the other place it's famous for is where Hannah, our daughter, went to school, which is Friuli. And it's really the only place in Italy it's grown with any great, in terms of any real production. And that's northeastern Italy, and it's a very famous variety there. It's famous, it's the name for the grape in Italian talks about the redness of the stem. It's a grape with typically quite a bit of pigmentation for an Italian grape varietal, but it's very grapey, and it's so interesting. I tasted this wine and loved it, and started talking to people, and our son-in-law, Hannah's husband, his parents, who have slept in their house many times, and that you get up in the morning and you look out the window and there's a winery. This comes from that winery, literally across the street, where Matteo has also spent a harvest working, which happened to be this vintage. So anyway, well, we'll take it for a little bit of spin, but Refosco, or what's also called Monduz or Toronto, grown a little bit in Slovenia. So when you're up there in the northeastern part of Italy, you jump across the border to Slovenia, you see a little bit of it as well. Very, very grapey, beautiful kind of acidity. I once heard somebody say if you took Gamay and Syrah and crossed the two, you'd end up with Refosco, and it has kind of that character, a little bit meaty too. Sweetness of fruit, very, very kind of round, but a really bright, we say fruit acid, where you notice it more on the back sides of your tongue and the very, very back. Which I don't know about this, but it probably has a lot of malic acid to it, which is the acid you see like in Barbera, Gamay, and that. And those make great drinking wines. So I talked about with the Cabernet, with lamb, I think this is the same kind of thing. It's kind of a different take on it, but it has a sweetness of fruit and a power that kind of stands up to it, that acidity kind of cutting through those savory components. But instead of complementary flavors of the savoriness, here you get kind of like a sweetness of fruit with the savory elements we put on typically on the outside of a lamb roast when we roast it. So that's really, really beautiful. Drink it now. It's also really nice in the summer. This would be great barbecue wine. Stands up to a lot of really pungent flavors. To finish up with Carlo Schmitt. To Carlo, if you see this. Susan and I, as you know, many years ago, the first job we worked in overseas was the Mosel Valley for Carlo's father, Heinz. And Carlo has picked up in his dad's shoes and does really amazing things. And this is a wine from the 21 vintage, which is a vintage of elegance again. So we see that with both the Cabernet, the Refosco, and this are vintages that play into this style of finesse and elegance. This is a Klusserather, which is a very famous, very large vineyard, but just prime. It's like if a cow was all ribeye meat. This is what Klusserather is. It's this beautiful slope that faces due south that just has this incredible exposure, beautiful rock outcropping with the river at the bottom. And this is from some old vineyards, what are called Alte Reben, old roots basically. They give you kind of an extra nuance and complexity. This is on the drier side, and so this has a lot of spice and some components to it that is just really stunning. So you can see a beautiful golden color with this wine. Wow. Comes out of the glass like passion fruit, but not sticky, a little like lemon zest in that, but just tangy. I mean, you smell this, you just anticipate tasting it, putting it in your mouth. It's just amazing. The Germans say sometimes sunshine in a glass. The elegance and power. Riesling is truly one of the great wines that rolled out of the Mosel. This wine is just so rich and perfumed and delicate. It's all these things just pulled in like the perfect direction, one opposing the other. Savory, dry. It just kind of hits all those different things, but not too much of any one. Just beautiful on a sunny day, or beautiful with a Beautiful plate of cheese and charcuterie in that, but just a very, very elegant, flavorful wine. This wine has a lot of, the drier you make a wine, typically the less it ages. And Mosel Rieslings age a long time with sweetness, moderate sweetness, they age a long time. This wine's still probably good another 7, 8, 10 years or so, but it's just really revealing a lot of itself right now. So with that, we'd like to say thank you again for support of our family's dream and allowing us to share what we are so excited about and we all love. So to the genie in the bottle, cheers.